sit. Hey you guys, welcome to what will be our first installment of Mind Mondays. I don't know if we should call it Mental Mondays, Mind Mondays, or what. If you have ideas, drop it in the comments below. Looks like this is where Daisy's sitting. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about family boundaries, setting boundaries, sticking up for yourself, and understanding how this affects your mental health. As many of you know, I am a neuroscientist. I have a degree in neuroscience, and I am also working on my clinical rotations and finishing up my degree in counseling and psychology and clinical mental health counseling. So I'm a big brain nerd. I love my neuroscience. I love all things kind of trauma and family, personal relationships, relationship health, emotional abuse. Those are kind of my specialty areas, but I do a lot of self-worth, women's health, pregnancy, postpartum infertility, and kind of really just encouraging people to find fullness of joy and be the most fulfilled person that they can be in their life. Achieving their goals and figuring out how to grow as individuals, I think, is my big thing. With that being said, our topic is family boundaries, setting them, keeping them, and understanding how they can really help your life and relationships be better. So really, I think the first thing, this is like an awkward topic for a lot of people. I am a wife, I'm a new mom. Navigating those family relationships is always difficult, whether you have a great family or you have a family that has some tension, that has maybe some mental health stuff going on, difficulties. Maybe you're not that perfect Brady Bunch family. That's fine. Honestly, most families are not. So with that being said, the way to approach family boundaries and talking about boundaries when they've been crossed or what your boundaries are, there are different approaches to starting this initial conversation. There is kind of that screw you, F you mentality, which is like, this is how it's going to be. If you don't ascribe to this, well, then you can just be cut out of my life. And then there's also kind of another approach, which is the approach that I think is a lot healthier from a mental health standpoint, emotional health standpoint, and really the goal of like having boundaries, period, which is to have a good relationship, to encourage health and wellness and kind of healing and just a cohesive family environment in general. So this occurs instead of having that screw you mentality. You can achieve firmness in your boundaries while really understanding that the overarching goal of the boundaries is reaching understanding and consensus through love. And I say this because a lot of boundaries are like a communication issue or a disrespect issue, and really standing firm in your communication, your boundaries, your honesty when they've been violated, and the way that you deal with them once they've been violated. So understanding and consensus, agreeing, understanding, be on the same page. You know, parents are on the same page as children, aunts and uncles are on the same page as parents, things like that. So it's really that consensus. And I say in love. I personally am a Christian. I definitely fail with so much of my communication every day with my husband and with my family members, with our in-laws, things like that. However, the goal is that whether you're a Christian or not, you share these things from a place of love, from a place of having good intentions. And it's not romantic love. It is more of what, okay, we literally just have the whole gang here now because this is my life. Because from a language standpoint, there are many different forms of love, and one of those major forms is brotherly love, phileo, kind of like Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. You want to exude this phileo always when dealing with family members, with loved ones, with friends, anybody that you are trying to set boundaries with. Exude this feeling of wanting to communicate from a place of good intentions. So with that being said, let's move into the communications portion. I wanted to give you guys some examples of good boundary setting and also just situations where it's difficult. These situations where boundaries are necessary is like family holidays, free time as a married couple. Like, it's so common for people to just get pulled a million directions and not have time to invest in one another. New parents, with everyone wanting to come over and visit. I remember my girlfriend told me that they would only let people come over and visit if they did a chore for them. I thought that was brilliant as a new mom. Like, they would basically make them either do laundry or wash dishes or fold clothes or vacuum. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that would be incredible. But boundaries can look like, which family member you're going to on the holidays. Financial boundaries. Is there a family member that's constantly like forgetting to pay you back for things, or, kind of like hitching rides to workplaces and never comping you, or a family member that constantly asks for loans, or someone that just takes advantage of your emotions? Do they call you all the time, basically venting to you nonstop, expecting you to listen to them and fix every problem? Or a friend that is constantly putting you in jeopardizing situations from a standpoint related to alcohol or drug use or partying or anything like that. Boundaries can be necessary in all these situations. It's definitely not just something for moms. It's not something for married couples. It applies to everyone. I wish I understood this better when I was a younger person, so I really got the whole boundaries thing. So some of the good communication examples that I came up with were the following. So let's say you're in a situation during COVID-19 and you have a baby, you have a newborn you just brought home from the hospital, or you have an immunocompromised child. I have a friend with congestive heart failure, something like that. This would be a great way to communicate to people that want to come over and visit. Say, hey, we're really not letting anyone come see our baby right now, but if you would like to drop something off on the porch, we would totally appreciate it. That expresses that you really genuinely want to see them. You would really appreciate whatever they wanted to bring. You're just protecting your family right now, or your child, or your loved one. The next one is related to kind of babysitting, maybe grandparents. I remember my grandma used to love to give us Klondike bars, and my mom was not about that. So another good example of boundary setting would be, hey, we don't let our daughter watch television, but if you'd like to read or play with these toys, I'm sure she would love that. Again, you're showing that you so appreciate that they want to play with your baby, that they're there to help, but we don't let our child watch television. And so just setting that expectation very explicitly, black and white, but also sharing how much you appreciate their support and their help. The next one is related to kind of just time with a friend or a baby or a neighbor or whatever it is, someone just wanting your time. Say, a good example of boundary setting there is, I don't have any time this week to have anyone over, but if you would like to come next week and watch the baby while I cook dinner, we would love that. You can sub in whatever examples or words you want in that, but I really loved that because when I was initially writing that statement out, I don't have any time this week to have anyone over, ... I initially wrote, I'm so exhausted this week, but you don't have to write that you're so exhausted. You don't have to tell them you're so exhausted. This is one of my things. You do not have to justify it. You just don't have time. You don't have time because you're too tired. You don't have time because maybe you want to go get yourself a cup of coffee. Or you don't have time because you just need a bubble bath. Like, whatever the reason, you don't need to justify things to people when setting boundaries. They need to respect you. They need to respect your time. They need to respect who you are. And just say you don't have time that week. Then the final one that I wanted to give an example of is one that I felt very personally as a young person growing up, as a woman. I'm sure people will understand this, but as a guy, totally with friends, you should understand this as well. I wanted to touch on the wedding issue, which is something that affects all of us. I gave a good example of boundary setting. It says, I cannot afford to be a bridesmaid, but I would absolutely love to help with coordinating day of at the event. Or I would absolutely love to help you with your flowers. Or give them another example, like contribute to the bridal party, whatever, or the bridal shower or something like that. give the bride a spa day, something, because being a bridesmaid costs a lot of money. It's a huge time commitment and financial commitment. So it's something that a lot of girls deal with, but I think we struggle with boundary setting in this area. So then I just wanted to, after giving you guys these good examples of boundary setting, say that really setting boundaries comes down to effective communication. Unfortunately, women struggle with this tremendously. Men communicate a lot better because to them, feelings are black and white. We tend to complicate everything. We have a hard time sharing our honest feelings and getting it out there and making that statement. Everything is just very nuanced. I don't know if you guys have heard the whole spaghetti versus waffle brain concept, but women have spaghetti brains where their brain is touching every single thing in the world. From a neuron standpoint, that's a lot more accurate than the whole waffle brain description where men compartmentalize. But you need to communicate effectively, you need to be honest, and you need to share your feelings. So that is one of the advantages. When you are not honest, it's a lot more complicated because really, how can you expect someone to respect your boundaries if you're not being honest with them? If you're not honest with them, they don't know when the boundary's been violated. They don't know what they can get away with. Really, people never grow out of the toddler phase. People are going to get away with what they can get away with. And so you need to be honest with them about your feelings. Then the next thing I wanted to share was how you deal with people that continually violate your boundaries. So this is really complicated. I think that I personally grew up with the kind of rearing that you're supposed to be very polite, very respectful of elders, very respectful of kind of other family members. And as we become an adult, I think I don't even know what I'm saying. This works to our disadvantage. And I say that because we often don't stand up for ourselves. I think as a therapist, I see this a lot in situations with emotional violence and abuse. I see this a lot with sexual assault cases. It's not always like this, but often people just need to have the courage to say no and understand that they deserve the ability to say no. So you as a child, maybe you're an adult child now, maybe you're a wife or a husband, and you need to have the strength and the understanding that saying no is setting a boundary. And, you know, if you say no very explicitly to things, maybe it's going to in-laws for Christmas or going to your parents for Christmas or your mom wanting to constantly buy your baby sugary foods or your girlfriend expecting you to answer the phone at all hours of the night and saying you're a bad friend when you don't. Whatever that boundary is, feel confident in saying no, feel confident in, letting people understand how you feel honestly. And then you can approach the continual or repeated offenders concept. And I bring this up because this is something that I want to talk about in another video, but you really need to approach that. If you have a family member or a friend that is a repeat offender, you set a boundary, you do all the things that I said, you communicate it explicitly, black and white, and then you let them know honestly when it's been violated. What do you do about the people that don't care, that keep violating it? And that is a whole nother situation, but you do need to identify that and realize that that is an issue when it is an issue. But know that kind of when you become an adult, the enforcement of these boundaries via consequences, whether that is you don't get to see the baby or, you know what, I'm not going to hang out with you as a friend anymore, or I need to cut you out of my life, or, you are not going to be allowed to come to the holidays with us anymore, or we are vacationing by ourselves during the summer because of the way you've acted. Whatever that is, you as an adult are allowed to enforce consequences when people violate your boundaries, hopefully through communication. That doesn't need to be the case, but with some people, they abuse those boundaries. Just as there are abusive relationships with couples, there are abusive relationships with families. And so don't let it get to that point. Enforce it, nip it in the bud. And it's really kind of a discipline mentality there in that regard on getting people habituated, which is, accustomed to expectations. So, yeah. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on that really relates to me personally is when people react to you setting boundaries or your enforcing of violators and whatever discipline, you can't take their reaction personally. That's a huge part of setting boundaries is people aren't going to like them. They're probably not going to agree with your boundaries. But part of this whole process towards having time, self-respect, and teaching other people to respect you is not taking it personally. So really, I guess this comes down to like, why do you set boundaries? I think a lot of people set boundaries because they deserve and know that they need self-respect, and they also have a limit, and they need self-care, and they need space and whatever. And part of your self-preservation occurs through setting boundaries, whether that's not having to actually clean up your house because family's coming, or having alone time with your husband, or protecting your children, or any of that. You need to set boundaries in your life, and it is very difficult to not take things personally when people don't agree with them. However, people aren't going to agree with everything, and you have to realize that it's actually very empowering to set boundaries and have them be respected. And once again, people are habit forming, and so they really just will function the way that they're used to and the way that they have practiced until something causes them to change otherwise. And your brains are like this. Your neurons form habit processes and habit patterns, and so they default to what has been practiced. So if that default is boundary crossing by your mom, maybe the boundary is going to be crossed until there are reinforcements that change that behavior enough times to re-encode the neurons in your brain and actually develop a new kind of mode of functioning. So we can talk, if you guys are interested in the neuroscience of habit forming, we can kind of learn that another time and talk about that and how to change habits. But that is one thing I wanted to touch on, is the fact that because this is all habitual, really because this is all habitual, it was something I wanted to bring up now. If you guys are interested in understanding the neuroscience behind that more, I can do that in a separate video. But the final thing I wanted to close on was identifying when boundaries have been crossed. Maybe you're watching this because you think you cross boundaries, or maybe you are someone that wants to set boundaries with family members. One of the big identifiers of when a boundary has been crossed with a family member or a friend, there's two main things. That person either reacts with anger, they get angry, they have more of that F you mentality, they are like, I cannot believe like you did this again. I told you not to give the kid sugary drinks. You're never seeing the baby, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's the anger reaction. The other reaction option is actually kind of a shrinking and shriveling away and a disengagement. Maybe they're not answering phone calls anymore. Maybe they're being really non-confrontational. They're kind of like shrinking down, you know, they don't want to talk about it. You try to bring it up. They're like, oh, it's nothing. They blow it off. Now, sometimes maybe it's nothing and they should say, no, really, that didn't bother me. We're okay. Like, let's just move forward. But if it's something where the topic has not been discussed and approached and honest communication is missing from the situation, look for either an anger reaction or kind of that disengaged, dissociated reaction. So those are two main things that when a boundary has been crossed, like let's say a boundary was crossed for me, those would be two signs probably that the boundary had been crossed. And if you're not bothered at all by it, then it probably wasn't a boundary. So just think on those things. I hope this video helped you a little bit with setting family boundaries and understanding some of the major components. If you enjoyed it, definitely drop me a comment below on what you want the next video to be. I am basing this off of the poll results in my stories and seeing who voted the most for different ones. There were a couple that were pretty high up there, so I am going to do the follow-up. If your topic was not this week, check it out next week on Monday, and let me know if you guys think this is something I should keep doing. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.